Alrighty, welcome back. I am going to play another training game. If you just watched the previous video, you'll see it was relatively brief, and for that reason I'm going to play another one. Now, this time we're playing against a high-rated opponent, or higher-rated opponent, 1765, and you know what? Exact same opening. Except this time we're on the white side of it, and instead of playing knight f6, he actually does take with the queen. So this is theoretical, no point in dawdling. It's theoretical moves I'm playing here. When I say they're also reasonable moves. Now that we've traded these pawns, his queen can actually be attacked, but not right away because this pawn would fall. So you have to first defend the pawn. Then most likely he's going to try and undermine this knight. This tends to go well for white and not so well for black, because now we play this move, attacking the queen, and somehow, in theory, all of this should work out for white, even if he takes this, which he doesn't. So he moves and he gives a check. Interesting. Now, I don't know the theory from this point, so now I'm on my own. All right, we've been given a check. I think this is a reasonable move to make. If we make this move, the queen still defends this pawn, but he's going to castle, and his rook's going to end up here, and he's going to have a lot of pressure on this. And then in order to, make the bishop here actually effective in defending this d pawn, I'm going to have to break this pin. And that'll have to be done by doing this and then trying to castle. So if I'm going to have to do that, maybe I should just put this bishop here immediately. He still castles, ends up with a rook here. Maybe dangerous. Maybe what I should do is actually this. Problem is if I play that, he then takes. Maybe another thing I could do is actually this. No, because I'm checked. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. What else? I think this probably makes the most sense. And then after he castles and I come here, these things tend to transpose into one another. So let's do it. Let's just do this to start with. Yes, he can take here and I take back. I understand. But this is defended. I can come here. If I want to, I could also castle long. And if I castle short, well, so be it. I have the bishop pair in exchange for a worse pawn structure. Quite a shocking pawn structure, actually. 4 pawn islands, 2 separate isolated pawns, and a set of double isolated pawns. Not really too crash hot looking. Now, if I push this pawn forward, I'm threatening the queen, but I can't actually play that move because the bishop is still pinned. So I think it makes sense to play this move regardless. Defend this pawn again, at the very least. Now maybe I can play this in future, but even if I play that, he can always defend the queen. So that's not, put all of our eggs in this particular basket. We probably still want to get castled and maybe put a rook here, get our king into safety. I don't know, but we need to play to our strengths in this position, and our strength is the bishop pair and the fact that there are a lot of open files that we could potentially use to attack. All right. One thing we could consider is just putting a rook here. I think that's a reasonable move. So let's do this. Now, we could also consider this fork, but he's got that amply defended. We've also got this check here now, potentially. This pushes him somewhat back into this corner, which is interesting. Certainly an interesting possibility. Not sure if it's something we would truly want to do, though. We could play this as well. And if he takes, take, and take, he's won a pawn with a tempo on the rook. So I don't think we love that. We could castle here as well. It should be noted we could castle. And that could be nice. We could move our queen out of harm's way. Harm's way being, this, but let's calculate. Just momentarily. D5 hits the queen. Now, if he wants to take, he's probably going to start with taking by the knight. Then we can take the knight. Then he's probably going to take back with, well, either piece, but let's just say the queen. In that case, I don't really have much. I can take and he takes back. And then I can skewer the bishop, skewer like this, but he comes here to defend the skewered pawn and also attack this. So I don't think I love that. Need to come up with something a bit better. All right. Need to come up with something a bit better. By the way, the reason I'm shivering is because it's cold. I should get a jumper, but we're in the middle of a game, so let's see. Probably castle, but what does that really achieve? Maybe I'm wanting to keep my king here, but if I put my king here, it always allows him this check. I think when I castle, I'm actually relatively safe in that position. Could put my queen here. Maybe we get a trade of queens, but at the moment his queen is actually relatively awkward on its current square. It's actually relatively awkward on its current square. If I play something like this, I think it's very likely he might just be able to plant his queen over here. And, you know, but in that case, I can just kick it out of there straight away. So I'm actually going to castle. I'm going to castle. No more pins. No check here at the moment. You know, if he comes here, well, I'm going to move the rook onto this more open file, or I might just move the king and bring the rook back. It's hard to say, but let's not get too far behind on the clock. All right, he's coming after the bishop, but I can take, which I will without thinking too hard because it opens up my rook. It saves my bishop, and let's put him on the clock. So we take once. He has to now decide which way he wants to take back. I think this is the more natural way to do it. Indeed, now we can give a check if we want, but we could also now provide a skewer to the queen. We can skewer this queen, and I think that's a nice move. He can't give a check. He can't take this pawn because we defend the checkable square and we defend the pawn with the queen. Everything else is looking pretty nice there. So let's start like this. I think that's a nice way to start. And if we can win this pawn, then we might be able to argue that his pawn structure is not great either, and that we'd be a pawn up, and we have the bishop pair. So it's up to him now to find a move. I am going to go get a jumper because it's really cold. Alright, looks like he's moved. What's he done? What's he done here? Oh no, he hasn't moved. He's still thinking. Good. He's thinking here because he has to move the queen. He has to move the queen, but he doesn't really want to. I don't care what he wants. Move your damn queen. Once he moves the queen, this pawn, which is currently under quite heavy fire by both the knight, the queen, and the rook, so I assume he might just move the queen back somewhere like this to maintain the pressure on this pawn. But if he does that, I could actually just push this pawn forward. And in so doing, it's protected by my bishop and my queen. And if he tries, to undermine the pawn, I can just simply take. And if we get some trades here, well, that's fine. Because at the end of it all, I will have an extra pawn as well as the bishop pair. And the queen will be off the board. So we'll both have pawn side weaknesses. But with my extra pawn, I really can't be worse. Whether I'm better enough to win is a fair question, but I really can't be worse in those scenarios. And sometimes that's all you really want, is to not be worse. Or if you are worse, to not be significantly worse. Let the game play on. and see what happens. Now, it's also very nice that he's using some time here, so we're actually, for once, winning some time back on the clock. So I think if something like this is played, we got to be methodical. We can think about a check, of course. But when he just moves away to the side, this bishop looks really awkward to me. We've given up, more of the defense of this thing. Okay, so he actually comes this way, which is interesting. I didn't realize that that was a square from which he can defend this pawn, and it is. So props, nice move. But what if I play this now? I think that's a nice move. Even though it gives up this pawn, I don't care. It's a double isolated pawn. And if you take it, for one thing, I take here if I want. And if I take here, I'm also going to be potentially threatening to take this knight, because I've got a pin going on. So, to me, this looks like a really natural move, even giving this up. Maybe then I could play this with a direct threat of checkmate. So I come here. If you take the pawn, I directly threaten checkmate. And there's not a lot of great ways for you to defend it. You can move the knight here, thus bringing 2 extra defenders to the checkmateable square, and also attacking my queen, which is maybe something you would do straight away. Good point. Good point. But then I take this pawn. You take my queen, I take your queen, then you take this. So, okay, I don't think we want to do this. At least not just yet. This could be a nice move, though. We're not actually threatening to take, because if we do, we would lose the queen. So I still don't mind the idea of moving the queen somewhere. It's kind of a matter of where we put it, though. That's kind of what this might come down to. We might also be able to think about moves like this. Again, we have to be aware, yes, we're giving up a pawn potentially. So we do have to be careful. But if we play a move like this, are we coming in with any particular threat? Well, that's another idea with d5, is that we open up this bishop. And, we're not playing this to threaten the knight. We're playing it to open up the bishop. And then in future, with our queen here and this move played, now the knight does have to move, or otherwise he takes, we take, he takes, we take here, and when he takes back in one way or other, we can take this with a nice big check. So I don't mind this idea, and then if he takes this, hitting the knight, I think that could be actually quite nice, because where does the knight go? Where does the knight go? Here? Thank you very much. I think that's quite a nice move, giving up the pawn. Let's try and think, though. This is obviously crucial. What's his best response after this? Or do we play this, allow this move, and only then do we come here? Allow him to take the bishop. The bishop is defended anyway. Take back with the rook. And then if he plays this, we play this, threatening mate. This is all possible. It sort of all looks pretty nice. Do we have to figure out what's the best thing? He does have this check. He does have that check available. Maybe we just simply step back and say, no check. No check. Meanwhile, if he takes here, in that case, then we can go like this, threatening the knight. And if he just defends the knight like so, not so sure about that. And that might be a downside to this move. Maybe it's just that he can take this pawn directly off the board. Maybe it's just that he can take this pawn directly off the board. But can he really just take that? Because then we attack the knight. We remove the knight. Yeah, I don't think that works somehow. So I think if we want to open this bishop, we may have to do it immediately. I think that's what that all means, is that if we want to play this move, we play it now. Okay, let's give it a go. Let's give it a go. And the idea is this. It's not to take the knight and lose the queen. That's not the idea. I don't think. Although maybe it should be considered. Because then we take back and we're still threatening, an attack, which may be worth calculating. But I'm also more interested, at least at the moment, I'm just more interested in the idea of following up now with this move, which now is threatening both the knight, and if it moves, then this square. So, and worst case scenario, it's kind of a low risk move. Like maybe I have to ultimately give up on this pawn or something like that. Not the biggest possible risk that I could take. All right, so here, what about this move now? As planned. This move as planned could be nice. Because now, if you take this, then good point. Okay, fine. Let's calculate this. If I take this and you take this, then I go check. And if you move to the side, I get a queen and it's mate. So if I take, you take queen, I go check. You don't have to take, you could step here in front of me. But then I take you and again I'm threatening mate. So I think it's probably more, crucial that after take and check, we have to look what happens if you take my pawn. If you take my pawn there, then I go check, which is a discovered check, and very nearly mate as well. I think you then have to play this move, at which point there is take the rook back with another check, but then you take my bishop. I don't think that's going to work out for me. I could play this check right now to push you further afield. And once you move, then we can play take. Then you take my queen. Then I play check, and you actually are 100% forced into taking back. And then I play, this is interesting. Got to get rid of some of these arrows though. So check, you do this. Well, that leaves me with a passed pawn that's protected. I can just, fall back, for example, or fall back to where I was. I've protected my pawn and everything's good. So check, you come here. Well, now you're sort of playing with some fire as well. Because take, you take, check. But I somehow don't think it's going to completely work out. Let's consider some more of the tactics. So check. He takes with the knight, I assume. Maybe check and then push this pawn further forward. I think that's going to be my best bet, and I'm running low on time. So I'm going to start with check. If he does this, I'm not unhappy because I've somewhat protected this pawn. And if he moves the king away, I can push this pawn forward and it becomes, potentially a problem for him in future that I've got this very far advanced pawn. The other thing I was considering was if I take the knight and give up my queen, what if I then just take his rook back? There I'm threatening checkmate. It may well be worth it. Take, he takes, I take. I've given up a queen, but I've got a knight and a rook already. I kind of think that might be the way to go. Check, not check, but capture, he captures. There is an option just to push this pawn forward as well. And in that option, he has to move the bishop so that this rook will contain the threat of mate. There I can recapture the rook. Very interesting. So he takes the queen. I take back. Again, he plays this move. Then I come here, threatening the bishop. If he defends the bishop, then there's checkmate. I am actually very tempted to take this knight. Alternatively, I push forward. If I push forward, that's a very annoying pawn for him to have to deal with. He probably plays something like this. I drop back. And then he simply takes the pawn. So, process of elimination, I'm going to take the knight. He takes back. Now, I've got a choice here. I can go check. That forces him to recapture. Then there's even this check. He can take though, so I don't love that. Check, he takes. I come here. I'm sort of giving him more. I think I'd probably just take the rook. Threatening mate. So he can't, well, he can take the pawn there. He could just take my pawn. But if he does, then I can come here, which threatens mate. So then he can come here. But then I can come here, threatening his bishop, and again threatening mate. So I think I'm just going to do this kind of by process of elimination. He does have this check. Maybe he can get back in. It's a very interesting attack, and I'm sort of feeling my way through it. Might be completely unsound, but I'm trying it. So what I want to do is box his king off. It's already boxed off this way, but it has this square. I don't want it to have this square because then it's going to have this square. I don't want him to have those options. So if I play this move, then I'm boxing him off into the corner and I'm threatening just to deliver a fatal mate. So I think that's what I've got to do here. Just have another quick look around because I could also give a check immediately, forcing him here. And then I've actually got this check, which is mate. So I'm so glad I was a little bit methodical here. I'm pretty sure this is a mate in 2. Check completely forces him here. And then check completely takes away every other square. Mate in 2. That was nice. I'm even going to pre-move it. That was nice, was it not? Was it not all right? I think that was okay. Now, I'm going to say that was pretty well deserved against a nice opponent. Computer says I've made 2 mistakes, but no blunders. Let's have a real quick squiz through this one, but I'm going to say this one was probably the best training game I've played so far, at least in terms of a really interesting attack. A really interesting attack where I gave up material in order to get a mating attack. So we had this Sicilian. This is theoretical. I know that much. After take, he comes here, I come here. He tries to undermine my defense of the d4 pawn. I attack his queen. He comes here. I now don't have any knowledge of what I'm supposed to do here. It says that white is much better here. I don't have knowledge of what I'm supposed to do, so I probably went wrong. I played bishop e2. That's actually a good move. After he takes, I'm forced really, I think, to take back. Things are going well. He castles. It is a scary looking position, but I played the very natural bishop e3, which is also the very bad. I mean, bad in quotation marks because I'm still winning, but there must have been a much better move here because prior to bishop e3, the advantage was much greater. So was it that I should have pushed here and, had this kind of a fork going on? Probably that was the move. Yeah, that would have been a nice move. Regardless, the way I played was still fine. I retained, a good advantage and the game went on. Here I brought a rook in, very reasonable. He moved his king out of harm's way. I castled, also reasonable. Now look, Computer says it's basically even. I've got a slight edge. But in reality, I haven't done anything grossly wrong. Like I have if, you want to take every possible chance and you're a computer. But from a human perspective, I'm not too unhappy with this. The position still favors me. And what more do you want than a position that favors you? So he comes here. I didn't take long to decide to take the knight because it opened up this rook. Now, whether it was right or wrong, it was a move I could understand. He took back, and then I played this move, which was nice. Very natural in any case. And he wanted to defend the pawn and also put pressure on this pawn. Now, here is where I spent the majority of my time. I had 11 minutes at the start of this move and only 7 minutes after. And what I ended up deciding on by a process of basically elimination was d5. And d5 was not a bad move. It was not a bad move. The computer has trouble evaluating it, but it maintains essentially the same small edge that I've had. No, it's basically even. All right, so it's basically even, but I'm not losing. And after he played his move, well, now it says that I've got a good advantage. Did I prosecute it the right way? Bishop f4 check. No. Very wrong. Now, I thought here that if he pushes the pawn, that should be fine for me. And the computer agrees. That should be fine for me. His only other option... I didn't see that he could block with his bishop. Blocking with his bishop shouldn't be too bad for me, though. Like, it is better for him. Okay, it's better for him. I don't really understand completely why it's better for him. Why don't I just take this now? Potentially. This would be really interesting. He takes. Oh no, I can't check because he takes like this. Initially, I thought after check he takes like that. And then maybe I can do stuff like this. Regardless, this doesn't work. So what I would have done here is probably just take the bishop. He takes back. And he's actually better. Hard to say what I would have done. But anyway, what I did do was check. I missed this idea that he could intercept that. And that would have given him a small advantage. Not the end of the world by any stretch, but fair enough, a mistake, because I only considered this and, the king moves. He ended up moving the king, which, gave my advantage straight back to me and amplified it. From there, taking the knight, I think, was key to the attack. If I had pushed this pawn forward and said I've got a passed pawn, the advantage swings heavily in his favor. So actually the key to this attack was to give up my queen for the sake of a knight and a rook, which is not the biggest sacrifice in history, obviously, but it's something that you have to be prepared to do if you're even going to be willing to look at it. Because at first I was saying, I can't take this because he takes my queen. And it wasn't until I said, well, unless I actually do give up the queen, that I started looking at it. So I'm glad that I was relatively methodical. And that was the first instance of it. After he took back, it's already mate in 2, actually. So I should have been looking at check and check because it's already mate in 2. Oh, and I did. Luckily, again, I was being methodical and I got the mate in 2. So you know what? I'm happy with this game. I hope you enjoyed it. It was interesting. It was interesting and it ended in our favor. So cool. We got a few points on our side here. Hopefully the training we're doing is paying off. Hopefully this is sort of evidence of that. Anyway, let's not spend too much time playing around on training games, although they are important. Let's get back into the training. We'll see you next time for another tactics training session. Cheers.